Hello and welcome to the part and whole assignment. This is how I, Mrs. K, did it, so that's why it says it's done Mrs. K's way. There are multiple ways of doing this assignment, however this is just one that I would like to share. If you haven't read the part and whole assignment, you can take some time and pause the movie right here and read about Uncle Landowner and how he is leaving different pieces of his land to his nieces and nephews. Welcome back. So after reading the assignment, you know that we are trying to examine the map below to determine the fractional piece of each region of land. Explain how you determine that fractional part awarded to each niece and nephew. Look at the whole piece of land. We see that Uncle Landowner owns this whole entire square of land. So we need to figure out how much Ann, Bob, Cheryl, Fred, Eli, and Dia have at part of this whole entire land. So in order to know what each person has, we need to figure out how much Uncle Landowner has total. So what I did is I noticed that there were all of these dots that were already pre-placed here, and so I decided to connect the dots and to see what different parts I could create. Once I connected all of the dots, as I am doing right now, I noticed that not only were I making rectangles, but if I connect the dots going vertically, I'm also making a bunch of small squares. So now that I have a bunch of these squares, I can know how many pieces Uncle Landowner had total. So I know that if I go horizontally that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 vertically. So I know that if I multiply 6 times 6, I can get the amount of the total squares inside this box. So I know that Uncle Landowner had a total of 36 pieces of his land. Since he owned all 36, I know that he had 36, or one whole piece of land. But when I'm looking back at the instructions, I know that I'm not just wondering about how much Uncle Landowner had. I'm curious about how much Ann, Bob, Cheryl, Fred, Eli, and Dia have. So now I need to go and discover how much each of those individuals have, and I can use those squares in order to find what fractional pieces they have of that 36. So if I see Ann, I notice that she has this outlined region up on top. And now all I need to do is just see how many of those squares, of the 36 squares, Ann has. So she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of those 36. So I can write that as 9/36 for Ann. So when looking at Bob, I noticed that his whole land happens to be larger than Ann's, but I noticed that there's also something quite different about this region. And because I've been counting all of the different squares, that's been really easy because all I need to do is count. However, for Bob, there are actually 2 parts that are not part of a complete square. But what I notice here is that what's happening is actually it is one whole square that I'm outlining right here that's actually cut in half. So instead of one of these squares, which I consider to be one whole, so all of these are one whole, these 2 areas right here, I'm going to be considering to be halves. So I know that I can have 1/2 here and 1/2 here. So as I count up everything for Bob, I notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 wholes and 2 halves. I know that if I add the 2 halves, that I can be able to have 1 whole. So in total, if I have that be equal to 1, then I know that Bob has 11 out of the 36 total pieces of land. Now Cheryl, she has this land right here, and this is only a little bit difficult for us because we see that she is not like Ann and has only whole pieces, but she's like Bob and she has a few of these half pieces right here. So these half pieces, what we can do is we can add them up because we know that they are 1/2 each. So let's see how many of those halves can make our whole. Since we know that 2 halves equal 1 whole, we see that we have 1 2 halves, so that's 1 whole, 1 2 halves, so that's 2 total wholes, and 1 2 to make 3 total wholes. If we connect those 6 halves or those 3 wholes, then I know that I also have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total pieces for Cheryl's land. So out of that 36, Cheryl has 8. Now Fred, he doesn't have as much as Cheryl does because we can see that he has a little bit less, but he also includes some of these half pieces. So let's just continue our trend to see how many of these 36 pieces Fred has. So I see that he has 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves, or if I add those together, that's 1 2 halves to make 1 whole, 1 half to make 2 wholes. So he has 4 halves or 2 wholes, and we also have 2 more wholes with a total of 4. So Fred has 4/36 of the land. We see that Eli hasn't been as fortunate because he was only provided with a smaller portion right down here at the bottom, which are both 2 halves. So we know that 1 plus 1/2 is equal to a whole, so Eli has only 1/36. Last but not least, we're going to be looking at Dia, and we see that Dia has a pentagram right here, and she has 2 halves to make 1 whole, and then 2 other wholes. So if we count that all together, we have 1 2 2.5 3. So Dia has, out of that 36, she has 3 out of 36 for Dia. Now I'm going to go to the next slide so that I can write all of these out and I can compare who has the most. So to review, I found that Anne had 9/36, Bob had 11/36, Cheryl had 8/36, Fred had 4/36, Eli had 1/36, and Dia had 3/36. Although I know that I could reduce a few of these fractions, I want to keep them as their fractional pieces so that I can be able to compare them. As I'm looking, I can see that Bob has the most, followed by Anne, then Cheryl, then Fred, Dia, and Eli. Something that's really important to note is that if I were to add up all of my fractions, I should be getting a total of 36/36 or 1 whole, since I know that each of these individuals are the nieces and nephews of Uncle Landowner, and Uncle Landowner had all 36 of the 36 pieces of land. I can add up my 9, 11, 8, 4, 1, and 3/36 to get a complete total of 36/36. So that is my total goal of that for Uncle Landowner. So that's all I got about part and whole activity, and I know that we will be having some extension problems also on the website, but thank you so much for watching Mrs. K's Way of Part and Whole. I hope you have a great day. Thanks.